that diagonal sloping line is always side C. Let's talk about A and B. A is the bottom of the triangle. It's the base of the triangle. It's the horizontal line. So that means B must be the vertical line. So A is the bottom of the triangle, that horizontal line. B is the vertical. And then C is the diagonal line. So you've got three sides on your triangle. The bottom, the horizontal, the vertical going straight up, and then you've got the diagonal to make the right angle triangle. And the right angle is in the bottom left, that bottom corner, and that is 90 degrees big. And then you've got your other two sides. So I'm painting a mental picture of what a right angle triangle looks like. The diagonal line is always side C. Today, I'm going to tell you that side A is the bottom of the triangle, the horizontal, and side B is the vertical. A, B, and C. Pythagoras, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So now let me explain to you what does that word square means. Right, let's just say I've got the number 3. So I've written the big number 3, and then I'm going to put a little 2 above the number 3. So just to the right of the number 3, I'm going to put a small little 2 there. What that means is 3 squared. Now, 3 squared means you're going to multiply 3 by itself twice. It does not mean 3 times 2 or 2 times 3. It means 3 times 3. So 3 squared is equal to 3 times 3, which is 9. If I have got 5 with that little 2 at the top, that means 5 squared. And 5 times 5 is 25. If I said 7 squared, that means 7 times 7, which is 49. If I say 11 squared, that means 11 times 11, which is 121. So square numbers mean you are multiplying the same number by itself twice. Let's go back to Pythagoras. A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. So when you have got a right angle triangle, you will be given 3 numbers. You're going to be given a number for C, you'll be given a number for A, and a number for B. As you become more familiar with Pythagoras, we won't give you the numbers for A, B, and C. That is what you're going to have to work out. But because we're starting right from the beginning, and I want you all to understand about Pythagoras, I'm going to give you the 3 numbers. So I've got a triangle drawn in front of me. Okay, right. The horizontal line, which is the way that we sleep, I'm going to say is 3 centimeters. So the horizontal line is 3 centimeters. My vertical line is 4 centimeters. And what we want to work out is what is the size, what is the length of that diagonal line, which is side C. But I've already told you that the famous Pythagorean theorem is A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. So I've just said to you that A, which is the bottom of the triangle, the horizontal line is 3 centimeters long. 3 squared is 9. I've said to you that the vertical side is 4 centimeters and 4 squared is 16. Now in Pythagoras, I'm going to say it again, A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. And remember what I said, C is always the longest side. So that means C must be the biggest number out of those 3. Okay, let's make this work. If A is 3 3 times 3 equals 9. If B is 4, 4 times 4 is 16. I'm now going to add those two numbers together because remember, the formula is A squared plus B squared. So A squared is 9, B squared is 16. If I add 9 plus 16, I get an answer of 25. Now, we know that if A is 9 and if we know that A is 3 and B is 4, it's going to be a really peculiar looking triangle if C is 25, because that doesn't make sense. So with Pythagoras, once you've worked out the value of C squared, you have to do what is called the inverse. You have to work out the square root of 25. In other words, something times something equals 25. And those two numbers must be the same. Now, to get 25, I know is 5 times 5, and I'm sure you know as well. So that means the square root of 25 is 5. So now we know that the length of the hypotenuse, which is the diagonal side, is 5 centimeters long. What did I say to you 5 minutes ago? I said to you that C, which is the hypotenuse, which is the diagonal line, is always the biggest and the longest. 5 is bigger than 4. 5 is bigger than 3. We've done it. You've solved a real problem. And what you've just done with me this evening is a real GCSE question. I've just done a real GCSE question with you live on the radio this evening. You didn't even realize that you were doing it because I made it look fun. I pictured a right angled triangle. I made you picture it in your head. So you drew the triangle in your head. I said to you the diagonal line is called side C, and that is the hypotenuse. We spell the word hypotenuse, Hypotenuse, hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is that diagonal sloping side. And that is always side C when we're using Pythagoras. You've got A, which is the bottom of the triangle, the base. You've got B, which is perpendicular to A. So that means it's vertical. And where you've got your horizontal and your vertical lines, where they both meet, a right angle is always formed. So think about the capital letter L. The capital letter L in the middle, in where those two lines meet, that is a right angle. And a right angle is 90 degrees big. So, do you know what? Okay, within 30 minutes, I've just taken you and I've actually given you a real GCSE question. I was going to say at the beginning, I'm going to do a GCSE question with you. But I know that if you don't like mathematics, if you are a little bit anxious, the minute you hear GCSE, your brain will switch off. But because I made the learning fun and I approached it in a different way, you're not scared of maths anymore. Because you know that you've got your vertical line, your horizontal line, you've got your diagonal line, and that makes up your right angled triangle. And you know that with Pythagoras, that diagonal sloping side is always side C. Side A can be the bottom, side B can be the side. Or you can have A can be the side and B could be the bottom. It doesn't matter which way round it is. But for today, let's just say the base is A and the side is B and the diagonal is C. It makes it easier. This makes it easier. Okay? So that is Pythagoras. Are you still scared? See, I've got a guest in the studio, and her name is she won't mind me saying her name, but she's going to be, she's joined Chalker Community Radio, and she's come in to watch me this evening deliver the show. And we were talking about Pythagoras, and I said to her that, listen, by the end of the show, you're going to love Pythagoras. I just looked at her just now, and she's smiling because I've given her and you, the listeners, I've given you that confidence. I've given you that security. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. It doesn't matter if you get something wrong. I get things wrong all the time. Dean is in the studio. You know about Dean. Dean does all the media and the social work. Dean does all the leaflets. Dean does the amazing comics. He's heard me get things wrong sometimes, but I'm human. And when I get something wrong, it's a learning opportunity. It's a teaching opportunity. So I don't want you to ever worry about getting something wrong in maths, because you're meant to. And when you get something wrong, you learn from it. If you don't know something, you learn from it. That is Pythagoras, and that is the right angled triangle. So Pythagoras is not that scary. When you hear the word Pythagoras in secondary school, straight away you think, oh my gosh, I can't do it. When you hear simultaneous equations, you think, oh, what on earth is going on? When you hear quadratic equations, it makes it even worse. When you start hearing about composite numbers and prime numbers, you start to panic. But don't panic. When you've got someone like me to teach it to you, and to teach it to you in a really understandable, relaxing, easy way, maths becomes so easy. Dean always tells me that when he's on the train going home, the lesson that he's listened to with me, it's made maths come alive. My guest in the studio, I'm looking at her and she's smiling because maths is not going to be a problem for her anymore. If there's something you can't do, you can read a book, you can go to the internet, you could call Mr. Numbervator. You will be taught in the best way possible. All right, so we know about who Pythagoras was, and we know about the right angled triangle. So now, why don't we do a question? Yes, let's do a question live on the radio this evening. And this is a real GCSE question. How do I know? Because I wrote this GCSE question years ago for GCSE paper. So this was one of my real questions. And I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to do it with you live tonight on Chalker Community Radio. We're going to do a real Pythagoras GCSE question. Can you imagine it? On the radio, teaching Pythagoras GCSE question in 5 minutes? It's unheard of, but we're going to do it this evening. Okay, so imagine, remember, with Pythagoras, we only use the right angled triangle. So you've got your vertical line, that straight line, that's the way that you stand. You've got your horizontal line, that's the way that you sleep. And then you've got your diagonal line, which is the sloping side, the sloping side. That's a bit of a tongue twister. The sloping side, okay? So a triangle has got 3 sides. You've got your vertical and you've got your horizontal. Where those 2 straight lines meet, that corner is called the vertex. That corner where the vertical touches the horizontal, that corner is called the vertex. That's the point. At that corner, you've got a right angle because you've got the vertical and the horizontal. The vertical is perpendicular to the horizontal. And that word perpendicular, if you talk to a builder, now I always say the same thing. If you've got a builder in your family, they are the best at maths. I'm telling you. If you've got a mechanic in your family, they are the best in mathematics. If you've got someone who's got their own business, they are the best in mathematics, but they don't know it because they do it without realizing. But I know, because I work with and I speak to builders. If I say to a builder, build me a shed in my back garden, they've got to get the measurements correct. You've got to get the angles correct. And they do it without even using a protractor because they've trained their brains. They know about perpendicular. And when they finish their work and you measure it with a protractor, I can tell you it's going to be absolutely perfect. So this is what I'm talking about. When it comes to mathematics, it's got its everyday uses. Pythagoras, because the other day, in year 10 said to me, why do we need to learn about Pythagoras? It's not going to help me in my life. I said, fair enough. Let me just tell you a few things. And I'm going to tell you what I said to these year 10s the other day. I said to them, do you know when you climb your staircase, it's a slope, isn't it? You go from the bottom to the top. That's Pythagoras. Because you've got an angle, haven't you? You've got the steps, haven't you? The steps go up, don't they? It's a diagonal line. You've got the straight side, you've got the horizontal. That is a right angled triangle. That is Pythagoras. If that diagonal line is too steep, you can't climb it because you won't be able to climb unless you've got a climbing wall. So it has to be at an angle. So that sloping, that diagonal side is what we call the hypotenuse. It's like the staircase going from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs. That's one example. When you get into a car and you're driving somewhere, so when I get into my car, if I know that there's traffic somewhere, I'm going to think of a better route to get me from A to B. So do I go left and then do I go straight? Do I go right and then do I go straight? And then do I come back diagonally to where I want to get to? That is a right angled triangle. That is Pythagoras. When you are flying, when a pilot is flying an aeroplane, they have to program the flight before it takes off. And they have to work out, if you go this direction and then you go left and then you go diagonal, you're going to avoid the turbulence, you're going to avoid the clouds, and you're going to get to where you have to get a lot quicker. That is a right angled triangle. That is Pythagoras. When you're working out how much petrol you need, or your electricity, or whatever your electricity, gas, or whatever you drive, I drive a petrol car. If you're working out petrol, you're thinking, I'm going to go from here to Neasden, from Neasden to Willesden, and then from Willesden to Cricklewood. So how much petrol do I need? That's a right angled triangle. From here to Cricklewood is a right angled triangle. How much petrol do I need? That's Pythagoras. When you are farming, if you are a farmer, if you're in your back garden and you want to grow tomatoes, peppers, different vegetables, you're going to have a little bed of plants for your tomatoes, another bed for your peppers, another one for your pumpkin or whatever. You've got a right angled triangle. That is Pythagoras. If you're building a shed, how much can the door open? What degree can I open my door on my shed? That is Pythagoras. When you're playing football, when I watch football, now my favorite team is obviously the best team in London, and that's Arsenal, but no argument. But when I'm watching Arsenal play, I'm watching how the players are passing the ball to each other. They look, and someone can be at a diagonal angle, and that is going to be the best way to get the ball from A to B. Unless you're going to go horizontally, then vertically. By the time you do that, you're going to be challenged. But if you pass it diagonally, it's going to get there quicker. That is a right angled triangle. So no matter what you are doing, Pythagoras and the right angled triangle is just so important. It comes into our everyday life. Okay? And that's what I wanted to make sure that you all understand this evening. Okay, so let's get back to the real question that I've been talking about. So I have got a right angled triangle sitting in front of me. So you know what it looks like now. Horizontal, vertical, diagonal. 3 sides, that's the right angled triangle. And where the horizontal meets the vertical, there's a right angle, which is 90 degrees. And opposite the right angle is the diagonal line. and that is called a hypotenuse, and that is always side C. So on my triangle that I've got in front of me, I've got C is the diagonal line, I've got A is the bottom of the triangle, and I've got B is the vertical line. Vertical is B, horizontal is A, diagonal is C. I'm hoping that you're all following. A, B, C. C, the hypotenuse, the diagonal line, is always the longest side. Let's go back to Pythagoras. What is his famous theory? A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Right, on my triangle, A, which is the bottom, the base of the triangle, is 8 centimeters. On my triangle, B, which is the vertical, is 6 centimeters. And I want to work out what is the length of side C. We have to find the missing length, okay? And we're going to do it using Pythagoras. Now remember what I said, A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. A is 8 centimeters. So if A is 8 centimeters, and A squared means I'm going to multiply 8 by 8. 8 times 8 is 64. So I've worked out my A squared is 64. Let's do the B squared. B is 6 centimeters. 6 times 6 is 36. So I'm going to have A is 64, B is 36, and in Pythagoras, A plus B equals C squared. So I'm going to add 36 and 64. 36 plus 64 equals 100. So C squared equals 100. But now that we've got the number 100, we need to find out the square root of 100 to give us the exact answer. And I know in my head what number times by itself makes 100. 10 times 10. So that means the length of side C, which is the hypotenuse, must be 10 centimeters long. Remember what I said, the hypotenuse is always the longest side. 10 is bigger than 8. 10 is bigger than 6. So that means we've got the calculations correct. And what have you done this evening again? You've answered a real GCSE question. You've answered a real GCSE question without even realizing it. Okay? This is the power, this is the magic of the maths show with me, Mr. Numbervator. I'm making maths come alive. I could have said to you, let's do a real GCSE question, blah, blah, blah. It might have put some of you off, but I just went into the question without you even realizing it, and you've answered the question. We now know the length of side C, which is the diagonal line. It's 10 centimeters. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. C is always the diagonal. No matter what, when you draw your right angle triangle, C is that diagonal, A is the bottom, B is the side. A is the horizontal, B is the vertical, C is always the diagonal. You can change around the A and the B, it doesn't matter, but C is always C, which is always the hypotenuse. HYPOTENUSE. So, listen, we've done 2 or 3 questions to do with GCSE, to do with Pythagoras. And I have even been working with some year 6s who are in primary school, and they can do this question. Why? Because I took them into the hall and we drew a triangle on the floor. We used masking tape on the hall floor, and we actually made the right angle triangle come alive. I said to them, we're going to go on a boat journey. We're going to start off at A. We're going to sail horizontally to B. When we get to B, we're going to change direction. We're going to go north. We're going to go straight up. We're going to go to C. When we get to C, what is the best way to get back from C to A? It's easy, Mr. Numbervator. We're going to go diagonal. That is the right angle triangle. You're not going to go back on yourself. That's going to be too long. The diagonal will get you back a lot quicker. It might be the longest distance, but it's going to be the shortest time because it is diagonal. And that is what Pythagoras discovered. And that's what you're discovering this evening. Okay, now these year 10s who asked me to do the lesson today about Pythagoras, they gave me a challenge. And they said, Mr. Numbervator, you always teach us on the radio, in the classroom, and whatever, but do you know your square numbers? I said, come on, of course I know my square numbers. How can you ask me, do I know my square numbers? Who am I, Mr. Numbervator? Of course I know my square numbers. Then one boy said, but do you know your square numbers from 10 to 25? I just laughed at him. Do I know my square numbers from 10 to 25? So now, live on the radio this evening, I am going to tell you every square number from 10 to 25. I haven't got it written down in front of me. I'm going to be telling you what they are. Why? Because I know them. I use them every day. And with Pythagoras, you need to know your square numbers. So, if you want to write these square numbers down, get your piece of paper, get your pencil or your pen, because it's going to be amazing. Are you ready, Dean? Are you ready, Sasha? Right, I'm going to tell you every square number from 10 to 25. And there's a way that I'm doing it in my brain. It's not magic, it's not a trick, but I'm using something to help me remember the numbers. So I can't afford to get it wrong now, can I? If I get it wrong now, I'm going to look a bit silly. But it doesn't matter anyway. But I'm not going to get it wrong because I know that I will always get it right. So square numbers from 10 to 25. Here we go. 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100. 11 squared is 11 times 11, 121. 12 squared is 12 times 12, 144. 13 squared is 13 times 13, 169. 14 squared is 14 times 14, 196. 15 squared is 15 times 15, 225. 16 squared is 16 times 16, 256. 17 squared is 17 times 17, 289. 18 squared is 18 times 18, 324. 19 squared is 19 times 19, 361. 20 squared is 20 times 20, which is 400. 21 squared is 21 times 21, which is 441. 22 squared is 22 times 22, which is 484. 23 squared is 23 times 23, which is 529. 24 squared is 24 times 24, which is 576. And 25 squared is 25 times 25, which is 625. And just to show off, 26 squared is 26 times 26, which is 676. So give me a round of applause then. Thank you very much. There you go. Right, so I've just given you all of those square numbers. But do you know what? Just to let you into a bit of a secret, I know every square number from 10 to 50. But we're not going to do it now, but just thought I'd show off a little bit more. But I've given you from 10 to 26. And if I can do it, you can do it. My brain is no different to your brain. Our brains look exactly the same inside of our skulls. but it's the way that I use my brain that has made me the way that I am. Listen, you know that I do not like when it comes to the end of the math show, because you know that I just love what I do, and it's just so much fun. But listen, today's show was about Pythagoras. And who was Pythagoras? When did he live? When did he die? What is he famous for? What is a squared plus b squared equals c squared? We associate that with the right angle triangle. What does the right angle triangle look like? I've described it. I've painted it a mental picture. You've drawn it. You understand it. 2 people have sent me a message. And someone has just said, can I please carry on? Can I please carry on teaching the Python? I can't. I mean, 2 people can because someone's going to follow me with another show. But if you want more of Pythagoras, just send me a message and I can do more. I'm going to speak to Dean, because Dean is the one who makes the comics. Maybe we can do a comic just based on Pythagoras. So that will be for GCSE students in year 8, year 9, year 10, and year 11. Because people want to be able to do mathematics in a much more easy, fun, relatable, meaningful way. That is what the math show is all about. Okay, there's someone else ringing me. I'm not going to take the call because it's coming to the end of the math show. But do you know what? This is what makes Chalk Hill Community Radio so amazing. It allows all of us to have our shows and to do podcasts and to show off and to teach what we know about. I know that in the future, there's going to be a podcast about young people, about what makes a young person a young person. How do young people relate to each other? What do young people like to do? What issues do they have? What problems do they have? How can they be supported? That for me would be a most amazing podcast and or radio show, because there's thousands of young people out there who are sometimes don't know what to do. But if you've got someone who is young and someone who can direct them, that's a winning recipe. So that's going to be on Chalk Hill Community Radio Station really, really soon. So watch out for this special young person who's going to be doing a podcast or a radio show for young people, young people's issues, young people's aspirations, young people's successes, how to support young people. That's going to be on Chalk Hill Community Radio Station. Thank you all very much for listening to the math show today. Pythagorean Theorem, Pythagorean Theorem is all to do with the right angle triangle. It's been great to get your messages. I've seen lots of balloons coming up on my telephone. I really hope you've enjoyed the math show. So next week, Wednesday, 5:30 to 6:30 on Chalk Hill Community Radio Station, you've got me, Mr. Numbervator, teaching you all about mathematics. And remember, my words are, maths is for everyone, and everyone can definitely do maths. Have a great evening. Keep warm. It's going to start to get warmer, but it's really cold. But keep yourselves warm. Keep learning your tables. Keep learning about Pythagoras. And I'll see you all next week. Thank you and goodbye.